What is up, everyone? 2 minutes in the box with Gordo on February 25th, 2025. Today, we're going to be recapping last night's games, the latest trade rumors, and the rankings of the top 40. Who's available, who's going to stay, who's going to go. In the demise of Adam Fox, Mika Rantanen, traded again, possibly. Slapshot, happy anniversary, 47th anniversary. Mitch Marner, future NHL All-Star game. Brand Marchand to the Oilers again. Chucky, Matthew Kachuk on late night talk show with Jimmy Fallon and review and talking about tonight's games. All right, let's get to it. The first game of last night. What an exciting thriller between the San Jose Sharks and the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets broke records in history last night. 10 consecutive wins in a row, and Mark Scheifele breaking Ilya Kovalchuk's all-time goals for a Thrasher slash Jet all time. And it was so anticlimactic. It was tiebreaker, Morrissey. I mean, just wow. And William Eklund and celebrating on the San Jose Sharks. It was great for the Sharks. They had the lead majority of the game, and they couldn't seal the deal. Last seconds left in the third period, and then Shively gets the game-winning goal in overtime. And Winnipeg is back on top of the NHL and number one in the Western Conference. And meanwhile, the other game between the Vegas Golden Knights and LA Kings, Quentin Byfield, spectacular night, 4 assists. He played amazing. He's finding his role, and he's learning a lot from Anze Kopitar. It's a player that, he's going to take the reins once Kopitar retires. Brett Clark, who was on the rumor mill and the trade block cylinder for a while, was upset when Doughty came back in the lineup. Listen here, Brett, take in stride and learn from Drew for a while as you can, and then you're going to be that number one defenseman on your team as a top pair in the NHL. You and Quentin Byfield are going to be the future of the LA Kings. Sit back, relax, enjoy the education you're going to be learning for the while. All right, now let's talk about the top 40 NHL trade talk. Okay, let's talk about this. All right, we got some interesting intel that we got Brock Nelson, who's currently the number one trade piece in the NHL, who plays on the New York Islanders. He's got $6 million on his contract, and he's a pending UFA. And he is a very valuable asset. And teams will clamor for a player like Brock Nelson for playoffs. And he's a strong centerman who can win draws. And he's been doing well in the statistic field. This year alone, Brock Nelson, he has gotten 17 goals and 36 points. And he's played 56 games, 33 years old. This guy is ready for a change of scenery, or he's going to get a new contract with the New York Islanders. On the second, we've got a bit of a controversy with, Yanni Gord of the Seattle Kraken and Brandon Tanev, who is also on the Seattle Kraken. And Yanni Gord, who's got 1 year left. Actually, he is a UFA at the end of the year with 5.166 whatever million dollars, 6 goals, 15 points in 35 games this year, 33 years old. I believe he is on the block. I think Seattle's going to be a team that's going to be getting some draft picks in return. It hasn't been going smoothly since they made it to the second round of the playoffs a couple years ago. Kraken are in need of draft picks. Ivan Provorov, defenseman for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He is a UFA. He loves it in Columbus. And Columbus is in a playoff hunt right now. He's got 6 goals, 25 points. He's got a $4.725 million cap hit. And I would say he stays. Columbus is done well for him. He's done very well for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's a guy who can definitely, he's only 28 years old. He's only 28 years old. He is a bona fide player that is you got to keep that depth on the back end for Columbus. You got to keep him. You got to keep him. And you got Brandon Tanev also on the Seattle Kraken. He is going to be UFA, a $3.5 million cap hit. Underwhelming, 9 goals, 17 points in 57 games. He's 33. I gotta say, Brandon Tanev, you got your payday, but I gotta say, you're gonna be a rental, and you're gonna, the Kraken's gonna get some guys in return, and I would say you're gonna get like a two, maybe 3 or 4 year deal for your next contract. I think your days of long term is over, and I gotta say, Tanev is a guy who, he's just a depth guy. He's just a depth guy. And now let's go to number 5 on this list. Dylan Cousins, 23 years old, 55 games played, $7.1 million cap hit with 11 goals, 27 points, and he's a UFA in 2030. I mean, there's been talks with the Detroit Red Wings, the Vancouver Canucks, Calgary Flames, and, I gotta say this. Buffalo, a team like that, they're scared that if they trade their own draft pick away to another team and he's going to thrive. I mean, we've seen it before with Ryan O'Reilly, Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, the list goes on. And Dylan Cousins, he's still a reliable player. He is reliable. And I got to say, if I were Buffalo, I would reevaluate this trade at the draft. You got like another 5 years left on the contract, and if you're going to retain the salary, you need something good in return. Draft picks, prospects, something to build up your depth. All right, now we've got another Seattle Kraken here. Oliver Bjorkstrand, UFA next year with a $5.4 million cap hit with 35 points, 15 goals. He's still a young guy. I gotta wait and see on this. If I were Seattle, I would keep him until next year. That guy right there is still a depth role goal scorer. He's a secondary goal scorer type. He was an all-star last year. I would keep him for now. Jake Evans now, Montreal Canadiens. He's got a $1.7 million cap hit. UFA this offseason. 27 points, 11 goals. Montreal, they're somewhat still in the mix, but I gotta say, you gotta do what you gotta do. Trade him, get some draft picks in return. Now we got Trent Frederick, Boston Bruins, plays the wing, left wing, and center position. 8 goals, 15 points, $2.3 million cap hit, UFA off season this year. Listen, Boston still somewhat in the playoff hunt. They're still in the playoff chase. He's a power forward. He's a grinder. He's a depth guy. I would say, let's see how the Bruins do. They're sixth place right now in the Atlantic Division. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I'm going to say Trent Frederick gets traded at the deadline. He's a great depth piece and he's physical, and teams who need physicality, like the Florida Panthers and a few other teams in the playoffs, you need someone to kick some, what, in the playoffs. All right, now we got our first goalie on here, John Gibson from the Anaheim Ducks. Save percentage is strong with a .915, goals against 2.65, 31 years old. He's got 24 wins so far this year. He's got 24 games I should play this year. 6.4 million UFA 2 years from now. Boy, he's going to definitely be an Eastern Conference commodity. He's an Eastern Conference commodity right now. I don't think it's going to be the Detroit Red Wings. I'm going to say he's going to go to Carolina. Carolina needs a goaltender. Frederik Andersen, he's good and all. Took them to the conference finals a couple years ago, but they need that extra depth in net. Carolina is the perfect destination for John Gibson, and they got to play, in the first round. They got to play New Jersey in the first round and Washington in the second round. And Carolina needs that depth in net, and I believe that's the perfect fit for John Gibson while his UFA status is for 2027, so he's going to be in Carolina then. All right, now, Kyle Palmieri, right winger for the New York Islanders. Interesting player right here. He's going to be UFA at the end of the year with a $5 million cap hit, 17 goals, 38 points. He's 33 years old. And I'm gonna say he's got some good numbers right here. And I believe the Isles are somewhat still in it, but I think he's the one who goes, and you got to get something in return, get some draft picks in return. I mean, that trade they done a few years ago with Devin Taves didn't work out as much. You got a couple draft picks, and Devin Taves won a cup, but you got to figure something out, Lou. Kyle Palmieri is the most valuable player in the poker chips. I would sell him off, get some stuff in return, draft picks, you name it. A player like that is like very crucial and clutch. All right, now let's get to the next player available in the trade deadline for March 7th. Ryan Donato, he's going to be a UFA at the end of the year for the Chicago Blackhawks. His numbers, let's put it this way. His numbers this year, Ryan Donato, he's got 19 goals, 38 points. He's got a $2 million cap hit. He is a UFA at the end of the year. That is a very good deal right there. Take the $2 million. I got to tell you, he's having a career year. Donato is definitely having a career year. He's got 38 points. Unbelievable right there. I know the -8. He's on Chicago, but 19 and 19, 38 points, career year. His stock is at all-time high. Sell, sell, sell. That's what I would do if I were Chicago. Get him off the books. You've got a good situation. You get a couple of draft picks in return. And Rickard Raquel, Pittsburgh Penguins, this year alone, he's gotten 25 goals, 49 points, 5 million, 3 years until he's a UFA. Any team is willing to trade for a guy who can get that depth. Pittsburgh, they need the help, but Rickard, Raquel, I personally want him to stay, but Pittsburgh is in dire straits. That team is not getting any younger. The window of opportunity is closed for the Pittsburgh Penguins. That franchise is going to be rebuilding for years to come. It's no joke. It is no joke. I would say Rickard Raquel is definitely on that trade block. He is going to be out of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now we've got Bowen Byram, defenseman for the Buffalo Sabres. Bowen Byram, there's reports that he's going to get a massive payday. He's only 23 years old, already a Stanley Cup champ by the Colorado Avalanche. Remember that trade last year, trade for Casey Middlestat? Well, apparently the trade did not go as planned. Bowen Byram, he's going to be an RFA. Buffalo Sabres have got a very good back end. I personally would keep Bowen just because, he's an RFA. Get him to a point, give him a 3 or 4 year deal just to make sure he gets a UFA type of deal. Like, he's still got good numbers, but are you willing to trade that depth on the back end? Are you willing to trade that defenseman who's a former number 4 draft pick? I personally would keep Bowen Byram. That's me. All right. If I were Buffalo, I would keep him. All right. We got Ramas Ristolainen for the Philadelphia Flyers. 3 goals, 17 points. He's a UFA 2 years from now with a $5.1 million cap hit. 30 years old. Philadelphia, they have their moments. Philadelphia has their moments, but I gotta say, get some good players and prospects and draft picks in return. That's how I would say. If I was Philadelphia, I would trade him. Then you got Gustav Nyquist for the Nashville Predators. 35 years old, 55 games played, 20 points, 9 goals this year. He's a UFA at the end of the year. Nashville, you got very cocky this last offseason getting Stamkos, Shea, and Marchessault. And, UC Soros with that contract extension. Get some draft picks in return. That's what I would do if I were you, Nashville. You got Connor Soucy. All right, Connor Soucy, let's talk about him. Connor Soucy, defenseman. I would say this. He is a player that I would like to have on the back end. He is a UFA next year with a $3.25 million cap hit with 2 goals, 9 points, 30 years old. He's 30 years old. A player like him, he can be a definite good fit for, for any team. He can be a definite depth piece. And he's on the Canucks right now. And I'll say this. He's practically played 300 games right now. And if I were a team right now, like looking for depth defenseman, that's my guy. Connor Soucy would be my guy. And like I said, he's a UFA next year. You get to keep him for a whole nother season, and then you can trade him off again. All right, now you've got Braden Shen from the St. Louis Blues. He's the captain. He's a UFA in 3 years, $6.5 million cap hit, 30 points, 55 games played. And there's been talks of a potential reunion between Luke and Braden Shen to Toronto. And St. Louis is in a weird crossroad. I gotta say, St. Louis, you know, that team is on the cusp of a rebuild. I would trade Braden Shen, get some draft picks in return. You got to go to a team that's contending, that's willing to sell prospects and draft picks and underwhelming contracts and performance players. All right, that's what I would say. Then you got Casey Middlestat. Middlestat, former first round pick of the Buffalo Sabres, currently with the Colorado Avalanche. He's a UFA next year with a $575 million cap hit. He's been very underwhelming this year with 9 goals, 32 points. Let's just be honest right there, people. Let's just be honest right here, ladies and gentlemen. He had a good run with the Avs last year. This year, it's been a very disappointment for the Colorado Avalanche. Don't forget, a few years ago, they won the Stanley Cup. They won the Stanley Cup. And let's just say, you've got another year with him. You've got another year with him. Last year, he had 18 goals. He had 57 points. And then the year before, he had 59 points, which was a career high. He is a very unique piece. All right. You got a guy who's still young. Casey Middlestat is 26 years old. I mean, are you willing and really sure about trading Casey Middlestat, Colorado? You guys are in a playoff hunt right now. I would personally keep him and then reevaluate him next season. That's what I would do if I were you. Then you got Scott Laughton of the Philadelphia Flyers. He's 30 years old, 11 goals, 27 points, $3 million cap hit, UFA next year. And he's been in negotiations of a contract extension with the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, Toronto and Washington still looking for something, but let's just be honest. Scott Laughton, he's a good depth piece. He's a grinder. I would personally take him. Philadelphia, you guys are in a rebuild mode. You got to get it done. You got to build and build and build and rebuild. And then you've got Ryan Lindgren, defenseman. I'll tell you, Ryan Lindgren, he's been a very interesting player. All right. Ryan Lindgren, been a very interesting defenseman. He's a UFA at the end of the year. $4.5 million cap hit, 2 goals, 17 points, 52 games played so far this year. He is a player I personally would take it on. He's on the Rangers right now. All right. He's a lefty shot. And, don't forget, his brother plays for the Washington Capitals. Would it be interesting if the Washington Capitals brought him in? That would be a unique deal, unique situation. He's been a solid defenseman. He's a shutdown, stay-at-home type of guy. I would definitely, if I were the Rangers are not going anywhere. They've been stumping and slumping lately. I would definitely let Ryan Lindgren go and get some draft picks in return. Then you got Ryan Strome of the Anaheim Ducks. Stromer right here. He's a UFA 2027. He's got $5 million cap hit, 7 goals, 30 points. And he is still young in his prime. All right. I got to say, Ryan Strome, he is definitely a player that I like a lot. His numbers are very darn impressive. He's a good two-way center and an impressive playmaker. All right. Last year, he had 41. The year before, 41. The Rangers, he had 54, 49, 59. I mean, the guy, if COVID never happened, Ryan Strome would have easily been a 70-point centerman. He has got some good hands. He's a great playmaker. He's a great faceoff specialist. And Anaheim is still looking for they're still rebuilding. I mean, they've got to do something about Trevor Zegras, though. And if I were Anaheim, I would keep Stromer for now and then reevaluate in the offseason. Now you got Connor Murphy right here. Connor Murphy, Gord Murphy's son. Connor Murphy, he's done pretty well with himself. He's done pretty well for himself. All right. Plays for the Chicago Blackhawks. And he, played 677 games already in his NHL career. And and listen, Chicago's not a sexy place to play right now. And it's not pretty. He's got like 13 points and 1 goal with a -6. And looking at his numbers right now, he is going to be a UFA next year. If I were, and you're going to get rid of Seth Jones too. I mean, you're really depleting the defense, and I would definitely not do it now. I would wait either off season or next trade deadline or whenever is the right time. I just don't think trading Connor Murphy is a viable, smart move right now. And now you've got a very interesting player right here. This one right here is a UFA this off season, and with a 775 cap hit. I mean, listen, this kid right here, Justin Brazeau plays for the Boston Bruins. He's got a very unique contract. He's undrafted, all right? And so far this season, he's still a young man. 10 goals, 10 assists, 20 points with a -5. 54 games played this season. Brazeau, he is a UFA in the offseason. Boston is going to be rebuilding, okay? The Boston Bruins are going to be rebuilding. And I would say this, Brazeau is definitely going to get a contract extension with the Bruins. Bruins need help all around, all right? Now you got Joel Mia. Joel Mia, and you know his story, former first-round pick. Joel Mia, let's say he's gotten 10 goals, 24 points, UFA this offseason with a $3.4 million cap hit. I'm got to be saying this. Joel Armia, he plays for Montreal now. He was with Winnipeg. He was a former Buffalo Sabre too. Damn, first round pick. And looking at his numbers right now, 66 games last year, 17 goals, 25 points. He's a good depth piece, all right? He's a good depth piece. Right now, like with his contract, I would say, he's got a good +1, and he's definitely a good playoff experience player. He's been to the Cup Finals before with Montreal, deep run with the Winnipeg Jets in 2018 in the conference finals. And if I were Montreal would be a perfect trade off for Joel Mia. All right, now you got another defenseman in David Savard. David Savard, he is a former Stanley Cup champion, by the way, with the Tampa Bay Lightning. David Savard, this season with 1 goal, 11 assists, this season with a cap hit of $3.5 million and is a UFA this offseason. He's got that Stanley Cup, went to back to his hometown. And he's a good, valuable piece right here. He's a right-handed shot. And is Montreal willing to keep some of the salary? And then any team looking for an experienced right-handed depth, I would definitely trade for that defenseman. All right, now you got Seth Jones here. Seth Jones, former number 4 overall pick, played his career with Nashville, Columbus, and currently with Chicago Blackhawks with a $9.5 million cap hit. I mean, the Blackhawks don't want his salary. And it's been very underwhelming in Chicago. And Chicago's best player right there. So far this season, 6 goals, 26 points, 30 years old, 40 games played. I mean, Seth Jones, there's been talks of Edmonton, Dallas, Colorado, Florida, Columbus. I mean, that leads to temptation here, all right? It is a very tempting situation. I would personally be okay. Am I willing to sacrifice some my own depth players in return for a defenseman stature in Seth Jones? 9.5 million, and yeah, teams are going to be very cautious with their salary. All right, teams have got to be very cautious with their salary cap and their and everything else. All right, if I believe Seth Jones is a gone trade. He's going to be gone before or at trade deadline. He is definitely gone. Then you got Brock Besser. Brock Besser's been a very interesting player. He's been having somewhat of a unique, revitalized career. All right, Brock Besser. He's been a very interesting player for the Vancouver Canucks. And Brock Besser, let's just say, he's an American born kid. He's got 35 points. Last year, he had a career year with 40 goals, 33 assists, 73 points. He can be a very good deal for a team that's looking for that second line goal scoring. He's got a hard shot and he's still 28 and he's from Minnesota. And I like Brock Besser a lot, and his numbers have been dropped off, and it's been very underwhelming so far this season. Then you got Michael McCarron from the Nashville Predators. He's got another year left on his contract, $900,000, 2 goals, 7 assists, 44. He's a good depth piece. He's a role player grinder. I gotta say, trade him, get some pieces in return. Now you've got Elias Pettersson. What a disappointment Elias Pettersson has become. Not too long ago, 1 year ago, Elias Pettersson had 34 goals, 55 assists, 89 points with a plus 20. The year before, 39 goals, 63 assists, 102 points. This year, it's very, very underwhelming with that cap hit of $11.6 million, 11 goals, 24 assists, 35 points. No way. I would not take that contract, and he's a UFA by 2032. That is a gamble I would not want to take. Then you've got Ryan O'Reilly, former captain of the St. Louis Blues and currently with the Nashville Predators. He's a UFA at the end of the year. I mean, Toronto wants him back, and he's got a $4.5 million cap hit with 14 goals, 30 points. That guy right here, I would say he is definitely going to stay in Nashville. That's where I'm going to draw the line right here. I am drawing the line right there. And looking at all the other numbers and doing all the homework and research. And let's put it this way, ladies and gentlemen, looking at these numbers, you got to be cautious with these draft picks, all right? You got to be very, very cautious of whatever you do in the NHL trade deadline. You got to be very cautious. And then you got Lawson Crouse right here. Lawson Crouse, he's been having an underwhelming year. He's got 2 years left with a $4.3 million cap hit. The Sheriff, talented player. He's a definitely depth player. He is a player that I could definitely use on my lineup. He's a guy who can definitely, he's on a pace for 17 points. All right. Last several years, he's been on a back-to-back 40-point campaign. He can contribute. He's a badass. I would love to have him on my team. Florida Panthers drafted him in 2015. And he was there only for 14 months, but never played for the Panthers. But I gotta say, Lawson Crouse is definitely, looking for a change of scenery. Max Domi, I mean, not too long ago, he was 72 points, and his career has been bizarre. All right, let's just put it that way. He's had a very bizarre career. I don't see him staying in Toronto long term, but I think he's going to get traded, not this season, but next season. Then you got Erik Karlsson of the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's got a big cap hit, and I don't know. He's got 100 points a few years ago, but I just don't see him staying in Pittsburgh long term. And he needs, some a Stanley Cup or something. But Carlson, though, I would be very hesitant to take him right now. And then you got Vladimir Tarasenko. Vladimir Tarasenko, Stanley Cup champ, two-time, I should say. Played with the Florida Panthers and St. Louis Blues. Played with the Rangers, and he was with the Sens briefly last year, but he's been having a very underwhelming, disappointing season with the Red Wings. He never fitted in with the Red Wings in the first place. The Florida Panthers couldn't afford him. He lives down in Florida in the offseason, but Vladimir Tarasenko, I gotta say, he is definitely going to be going to a top team. I know the Red Wings are like almost on the verge of taking first place in the Atlantic Division. The Red Wings need something impactful. They got to get a third party involved to make this trade happen. They got to get an upgrade. Tarasenko, his days as a Red Wing are over. And we got, Trevor Zegras. We were talking about Zegras. Zegras a few years ago, he had tremendous talent potential. Ever since he signed that contract extension, his career took a very bad nosedive. All right. He had a horrendous nosedive, and I think it's time for Trevor Zegras to have a change of scenery. And the last guy I want to talk about is Mikko Rantanen, Carolina Hurricanes. He's been very underwhelming for the Carolina Hurricanes ever since they made that three-way deal with Chicago, getting Taylor Hall to play with Mikko Rantanen, and then trading Jack Drury and Martin Necas away. I gotta say, that was not smart thinking. I would have not taking Mika Rantanen. Mika Rantanen, like, look at his numbers when he was at Colorado. It's Nathan McKinnon effect. It's that Nathan McKinnon effect. I would be very hesitant to sign him long term, and his contract demands are ridiculous. 13 and a half, $14 million. That is ridiculous. I want you to prove me something, Mika Rantanen. Mika Rantanen needs to prove me wrong. Tell me why he needed a $14.5 million contract extension a year. And Carolina, that team is very conservative, budget friendly, or not friendly, I should say. If I were Carolina, if his stock doesn't build, you're going to be just stuck with him. And the only way I see Mika Rantanen getting traded, the only way I see him getting traded is a sign and trade in the offseason. Do like what the Panthers and the Flames did a few years ago with Matthew Tkachuk with the Huberdeau trade. I would do a sign and trade if I were Carolina, in the offseason. And listen here, Mikko Rantanen definitely is a good player, but trade him not at the deadline. Do it either in the draft or in the offseason. Do a sign and trade with a team that is willing to take on a high profile, unrestricted free agent in the offseason. All right. Slapshot. Happy anniversary. 47 years ago today, the iconic Slapshot movie with Paul Newman and the Hanson brothers came out. That is a classic hockey film, one of my favorite films of all time. And it's created a longevity and legacy like no other in hockey film history. All right, top of that, Mitch Marner, he's a UFA at the end of the season, and Toronto, they are in a crossroads. Let's just say, does Mitch Marner stay or does he go? And the salary cap, don't forget, it's going to go up. And Mitch Marner was very impressive in the Four Nations Cup. I personally, I would flip a coin, best of seven, see what happens. But if I were a team that is looking for a guy who can definitely be a difference maker offensively, oh yeah, you got to pay the man. I mean, Toronto's got all the weapons in the world, but Mitch Marner, I mean, he's a local kid. I mean, it's tough to say. I would have to wait and see what happens right there. And now we've got future update of the NHL All-Star game. There's been speculation that ever since the Four Nations been a major hit, the NHL is conflicting with the idea of canceling the NHL All-Star game, but they would keep the festivities and the skills competition. The game is basically pointless and meaningless at this point. The only way you make the All-Star game much interesting again is you either have the host team with their team against the rest of the league, or I would love to see Stanley Cup champions against the entire All Star roster. That's how I make the NHL All Star game very interesting. All right, now we got Brad Marchand possibly going to the Edmonton Oilers. This rumor is never going to die. The Bruins are, like I said, sixth place in the Atlantic Division. The team is in a crossroads, and trading your captain away, and the Bruins are going to be a major rebuild next season. Boy, I mean, Brian Marchand going to the Oilers. I mean, will they get over the hump? I mean, it's a good chance they get over the hump and win the first Stanley Cup in Canada since 1993. I mean, it's a lot to digest and think and consider right now. I would consider, hmm, what does Edmonton have in return? You got to check out what you have available. That's the only way you're going to get something good in return. You don't want to get one-sided and basically ripped off in the trade. Yeah. So one of the last things I'd like to talk about, Matthew Kachuk last night on the Jimmy Fallon show. I don't even watch the late night show, but I heard it was pretty good. It was a good show. And, hopefully Chucky will be ready and healthy enough, in the next few weeks. Hopefully this injury is not as serious as the reports were speculating of season ending. I gotta say it's still week to week, and Kachuk will be playing, in the latter part of April and then the playoffs. But hopefully it's not too serious with the injury. And tonight's games. Yeah, sorry for babbling on too long. All right. We had a lot. We had 12 games tonight. We've got Toronto, Boston, Great Original Six matchup. You've got Anaheim and Buffalo. You've got Carolina, Montreal, Pittsburgh, and Philly, Great Pennsylvania matchup right there. Calgary and Washington right there. Then you got Dallas and Columbus in Columbus. You've got the Western Conference champs against the Tampa Bay Lightning on 7:30. And you got the New York City, Long Island battle between the Rangers and the Islanders. Then you got the Kraken, the Blues at 8 o'clock. You got the Stanley Cup champ Florida Panthers against the Nashville Predators in Nashville. Detroit Red Wings against the Minnesota Wild. Two great Midwestern states with great hockey heritage and history. And lastly, you've got the Chicago Blackhawks against the Utah Hockey Club. And yeah, it's been a good so far. It's been very good so far. All right. This has been 2 Minutes in the Box with Gordo. Hopefully you guys enjoy the show. Enjoy the rest of the day, and God bless. We'll be back here tomorrow.